And it's Monday night. Good afternoon. It's Dialogue with Dozell. Thanks for joining on with us tonight. We're so glad that you're here on this 4th of July putting. For those of you all, for you big patriots, I think a lot of people just celebrate because it's a holiday. It's a chance to be off from work. It's a chance to barbecue and have some fun. Whatever it is, congratulations for tomorrow night, so 4th of July. Dialogue with Dozell tonight. So glad that you hop on. Tonight's show is going to be dedicated. I'm having some issues with my guest. The weather's bad, and as you can see, I'm out of studio today myself. But I'm getting text messages from KV's standing by to join us tonight. They're having problems getting on. Okay, Madam Producer Antwan is saying that he needs to be added. That he needs to be added on. I don't know exactly what that means, but that's what he's saying. If you could communicate with him. In the meantime, if we're ready for the dedication, tonight's show is, are we? Okay. Tonight's show is dedicated to the loving memory of Dr. Randolph, the Reverend Dr. Randolph Bracey Jr. Dr. Bracey was a trailblazer amongst many. He led many and did many great things in our community in every locale where he worked, where he matriculated, where he went to school. He was always a leader and did great things. Dr. Bracey is a theologian, a philosopher, a leader of politicians, a narrative driver, a storyteller, one who made a difference in communities wherever he went. He's definitely a stone educator. He's a PhD. He is a graduate of Bethune-Cookman University. Dr. Bracey was eulogized on this past Saturday at the First Baptist Church down in Orlando by our Bishop Rudolph McKissick Jr., who did a magnificent job of telling a story about him being at the riverfront and ready to cross over. He metaphorically talked about it in terms of ministry, which I'm about to talk about, but in many other things. Dr. Bracey got his Master's of Divinity from Colgate Rochester Divinity School, which is where, during that time, where a lot of the civil rights theologians went, and it was only fitting for Dr. Bracey to have gone there. Dr. Bracey, a PhD, who well, let me talk a little bit about his ministry. He pastored a church in Philadelphia for many years, coming out of seminary. He then came down for a year and pastored the Shiloh Baptist Church. That's right in downtown Orlando. And then he and his wife, who is also a doctor, Dr. Bracey, they founded the New Covenant Baptist Church in Orlando on 18 sprawling hills, a beautiful riverfront there in Orlando. And there he pastored until his retirement, I think about 10 or just 7, 8 years ago. And recently, Dr. Bracey was commissioned to establish the Bethune-Cookman University School of Religion. And that's what his project was, and that's what he was doing up until a sickness that ultimately took him to glory. Dr. Randolph Bracey and I were brothers in ministry from the Bethel Church in Jacksonville under the leadership of Bishop Rudolph McKissick Sr. And thus the friendship developed between the Braceys and the McKissicks, and particularly with McKissick Jr., Bishop Jr. Dr. Bracey's, Dr. and Mrs. Dr. Bracey are the parents of two bona fide Orange County politicians. Their son and daughter. The daughter currently serves in the House of Representatives, where she formally introduced our group, Faith in Florida, and her mother a few months ago during the legislative session, and they both spoke so eloquently at his homegoing celebration on Saturday. Dr. Bracer was in the throes of starting a Master's of Divinity program at Bethune-Cookman University, and there are a lot of Bracy fellows who have followed him, and everywhere that he has gone, and particularly at that institution, his mark will forever be. Dr. Bracy was known for his very animated style of ministry preaching. He preached with much substance, and he was very animated. One of the things that everyone was reminded on Saturday was that he liked to pop that handkerchief. He would take that handkerchief and pop it towards a preacher who was preaching in the throes of a great part of their message, and so he was greeted accordingly on Saturday at the celebration. Dr. Bracer was not only a theologian and a preacher, a preacher's preacher, but he also was a politician. Not that he ran for office, but he was a kingmaker and leading others to lead to office. And he was a bona fide uh, stander, a drum major for justice who led civil rights and fought for the rights of all people, not just civil rights, but human rights and every kind of right for all people. So today, the dialogue takes time out to celebrate. You see him there. Um, Dr. Randolph Bracy Jr., our love and respect goes out to him and his family. He was buried on today, funeralized on Saturday. Dr. Bracy, we thank God for sending you our way. Tonight's dialogue is dedicated to you. Okay, so I'm on, and Madam Producer is fighting gallantly. And I understand that there's some weather issues that may be complicating as we're trying to get our guest on tonight, Antwan Murphy, Antwan the comedian. Kim and I were together, had the opportunity to run into him on Saturday, and not Saturday, on last week. And he said, "Man, what's going on with the podcast?" And we both say, "Hey, it's there." And almost simultaneously, we say, "You want to join us tonight?" And Monday night, and he very quickly agreed to. So we're hoping that we can get these issues resolved for he and KV. Both of them are on tonight's dialogue. In the meantime, what's going on with you? What's happening with you? Tell me what's happening. We'll have to make this thing work until our guest and our co-host uh, comes on, and just we'll make it happen. A lot of stuff happened in NBA free agency. There's a lot of stuff in the political world. There's a lot of stuff in the legal world. I'm still trying to figure out how are Republicans, how are they ready to support a candidate who is facing jail time. He's not only twice impeached, once defeated, and he's now twice indicted. And his court dates have been set for August, the federal trial for the documents. That case has been slated for Fort Pierce, Florida, beginning in August of this year. That's going to be pretty quick if that happens. And the civil trial in New York City has been not the civil trial, the state charges um, for, for tampering with documents uh, goes on is slated for trial in the middle of the Republican primary season over in March. Um, Madam Producer, if you're able, just come right on voiceover with me and tell me where we stand with our guests, if you don't mind. What's going on? Text me and let me know what's happening here, um, so that we'll know where we stand. Antwan has a whole lot of energy and a whole lot of juice, so we're hoping to get them right on. Um,
Can you hear
and
me okay?
yes, ma'am, we got you. What's up?
Okay, awesome. So we're still working on the guests. This is it's really bad weather, a lot of thunder and storming here in North Florida. So we are still working with our guests. But I did want to mention one thing since we have a little time. We have a little time, right? A little time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So
Madam Producer,
today,
it's
yeah,
close time.
okay, today marks National Crown Day or Black Hair Independence Day, so celebrating the signing of the Crown Act, which happened in 2019. The Crown Act legislation bans discrimination based on how you wear your hair. your crown.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Elaborate on that, sis.
Okay, so I know you have to remember there were instances, especially I remember in Florida where someone had locks. They wore locks to work, and that was just a big uproar. Everybody was upset because in some communities they're looked as unclean to have locks. Which is really crazy for us, right? From South Florida, you CEOs
Unbelievable.
have locks, right? Unbelievable. Um,
Everybody.
everybody in my own personal story, I can remember in college, part of the inroads program, and we specifically had seminars on how to wear your hair. And at that time I had an afro and it was frowned upon. And years later, ended up seeing that one of the mentors, and she apologized to me. But that was definitely an issue. You're going to make it hard for yourself if you go in there with braids or an afro. You need to have it, very straight and short. Not short hair, and make sure that it's straightened. So that's my experience. I think it's silly that we have to have such legislation, but it is what it is in this country, right?
That's really unbelievable. Now, you went to Tennessee State. Was that an African American mentor who told you that and held you to that, or was that?
Absolutely, everybody was black. Everybody in that program, inroads, you had to have a certain GPA and all these type of things to be part of the program. It was kind of a little bit prestigious, right? And if you wanted to get a job, they knew how to get you a job, but you had to follow the requirements. And I definitely was not cutting my afro big. It wasn't happening.
Unbelievable. Didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, here I am feeling bad that that I'm being discriminated against because I'm devoid of hair, and here you guys are with hair, and they're giving you a hard time. That's I can't wrap my mind around that one.
Yeah, most interesting.
Well, what do you remember about Antwan, the comedian?
Fun tea, super fun tea. I remember him and Auntie Linda were on together, and so that was hilarious. So I'm looking
Oh
forward.
man.
I'm looking forward to hearing from him. So I'm gonna come off and I'm gonna see if I can assist them with getting on.
Okay, thank you,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you.
Okay, so as we know right now, that's amazing. We celebrate that day. That was that 4 years ago now that this act was passed in Congress, the Crown Act legislation. That is unbelievable. Oh wow! Don't give them too much chance. Uncle Festus and the Supreme Court will quickly shoot that one down, given the opportunity. Um, we'll talk about that a little later in the show. Um, yeah, we'll talk about that a little later in the show, won't we? So I'm trying to do the KV thing. I got this little toothpick working, and probably gonna do it with the same style and grace that he does it. But we'll see if I can make it through the show with it, or if I need to discard it. So in NBA free agency, interesting thing happened. Lillard was Dame Dollar. Let me just say it that way. I don't have to mess up the man's last name. Dame Dollar saw his team draft the third. They had to draft the third draft pick, and they're in a rebuild. He has made it known to them that he's very, very, very loyal to the Portland, uh, Rip City area, and he did not want to leave, did not want to be traded. But he also made it known that he's not interested in a reboot. He's not interested in being there for them to start over with the youth movement. So um, they went ahead and made that draft, which is, of course, an indication that they are in a youth movement. Lillard was quiet for a few nights, and then on Saturday, apparently, he requested a trade. The number one suitor for a trade for Damian Lillard is the Miami Heat. That's right. Let's go Heat. Um, so the Heat, and apparently Portland has put some caused a few issues with that by not making that a easy thing, and saying that just because Miami is interested in Dame Dollar said that's his first choice would be his first choice, and goodness knows, with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, Damian Leonard would just make that a potent, lethal combination, and they would have to go right to the top along with Boston and Milwaukee and possibly Philly. See what happens with the James Harden situation as a contender um, for the Eastern Conference championship. Of course, they went. this year all the way and won a game in in the West in the NBA Finals without even Tyler Hero. Tyler Hero, let's talk about him. Portland allegedly is not interested in Tyler Hero, who has what is tantamount to a max contract, and so it would take a third team apparently to make that part of the deal go, and they would probably like to strip Miami of its. I don't know about the draft picks that they made on the other night. They picked this kid out of UCLA who's quite a player, but they're looking for some number one picks in the upcoming draft. And I don't know if the Godfather is ready to come off of that. He said he's ready to run it back with Hero. In the meantime, Tyler Hero has taken Miami and he off of all of his off of all of his social media profiles. He doesn't have the colors, he doesn't have the name, the nickname, he doesn't rep South Florida, any of those things. So it's an interesting series. It's as though he feels it's inevitable that he's about to be moved. And to my great surprise, I thought it would be a slam dunk that if Damian Lillard made a decision to be traded as he now has, that Miami will be number one. Dame Dollar has no trade clause in his contract, so that they can the Portland Trailblazers really controls his destiny and not he himself. So that's going to be interesting. We'll kind of keep our fingers crossed and see how that comes out. Because with him, oh boy, that would be a potent big three down in Miami. Could you just imagine Jimmy Butler having him on his side? Um, Also, at the 11th hour, James Harden opted into his contract, but he opted into it with a twist, asking to be traded. He opted into the contract, but he asked to be traded. Uh, so I don't know what that's about. He and Daryl Marbley have a great working relationship from the Houston days, and for him to want to be traded away, a team that's right on the cusp. Remember, they were home in Game Six with the lead, with like 6 minutes left, in leading the series 4-2, and 3-2 rather, and they went on a cold streak, and they let Boston get hot, and Boston came back and won that game, and of course they blew them out in Game 7 in Boston. So they were that close to the NBA to the Eastern Conference Finals, and only who knows how this would have turned out had they end up playing the Miami Heat in the finals of the Eastern Conference. And now he wants to opt out. He wants to be traded. The other part about that, if he in fact goes to another team, that would be what, four teams that he would have played on in 5 years. Remember, he fatted his way out of Houston. He let himself get grossly out of shape to force a trade to join Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and make the big three um, in New Jersey. That didn't work. He played gallantly. Remember a few years ago, the year that Kevin Durant stepped on the line, his big toe was on the line, and it prevented them from winning Game 7 and going to the NBA Finals. Milwaukee ended up winning that series and went on to win the championship that year. They were that close. Harden played hurt that entire series. He had a pulled hamstring. He gallantly was out there trying to assist Kevin Durant. Irving was hurting out of the series. So then he forced himself to a trade to Philadelphia. And the last 2 years, they continue to be that Philly team that can't get out of the second round of the playoffs. And so now he wants to be traded. Van Fleet, who is himself an awesome guard that was on the championship team up in Toronto that won that beat Dub City with what was that 2019, I think it was, when all of the injuries occurred. 2018 when Kevin Durant was injured and Klay Thompson was injured with his first injury, and They had um, they pulled together that team, and they defeated them for the championship. Van Fleet went on to become a premier point guard. Well, he moved in free agency over to the Houston Oilers, signing that version of a max contract. Max contract meant 4 years. Had he stayed in Toronto, it could have been a 5-year contract. So he went and got max dollars there in Houston, who has the dollars and are ready to see what they can do to to revitalize that franchise with mostly a youth movement. However, they are bringing in um, some veteran talent, and they have what who I think is an awesome coach in the association. Got caught up in a bad situation in Boston, but Ime Udoka will come in and make that a very make that a Houston Rocket team quite a contender. They're on their way. So you see, I'm stalling time, hoping that we can overcome some of these weather issues that are affecting our guests and our guests and our co-hosts from joining us tonight. I'm still waiting on news on the verdict from. They're both they're both on standby and trying to sign on, but I think the weather is an impediment for them, and they're not able to get on. Um, we're waiting to see what's where we come on. And if they don't come on, the madam producer is going to have to come back on and help me through this show tonight because we were really, really depending on Antwan, the comedian, and we'll just have to reschedule that if it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, okay. He tells me they're both working on it, but they're having difficulties. So right now it's hot button Monday. So that means whatever it is that you want to discuss, just call in and let's discuss that. I got a real hot topic. Want to discuss it, but I can't do it because it's a part of the midway celebration of the show, and I'll do it maybe on the other half. But let's talk a little politics. Let's talk a little politics. Let's talk a little legalities. What's up with your boy 45? I mean, my days as a police officer and just a person who follows the news and a person who has a reasonable portion, and hopefully I use that portion of common sense, tells you that if you're facing a criminal conviction or any kind of court action or anything, everybody tells you to keep your mouth shut. But he can't keep his mouth shut for nothing. That's the word I have to use here. He can't keep his mouth shut for nothing. He has now been indicted in state court in the state of New York. And now he's been indicted in federal court. And I'm gonna tell you, I got mixed emotions about this whole thing. You can't break the law and get away with it. Nobody can. Nobody's above the law. I am. I was a senior. Well, it was the year I just graduated in '74 when we had the Watergate situation, and President Nixon was about to be impeached and probably criminally indicted when he listened to some of his cohorts on the Republican side of the Senate when they came to him and told him that at this point he needed to resign. Ultimately, he did, and President Ford risked and lost his reelection because he came back and pardoned him on what many people thought was a deal that was cut ahead of time. So, but everybody knows that when you're facing any kind of legal situation, you keep your mouth shut. Why can't this guy do that? Why can't 45 just be quiet? He keeps everywhere he goes, he's talking about the case. He 1 minute he says one thing, the next minute he says the other, and then mysteriously evidence gets leaked out, which reveals that no, he knew that he could not pardon. The latest thing that leaked out midway through the week was that he had been saying all along that he had the ability as the president of the United States, a former president, he could actually think about declassifying a document in his mind, and it was declassified. Now you and I know that doesn't make sense, but that was his logic. Came back, he's caught on tape saying, I can't do that because I can't declassify an item, but look at it. He was raffling and you could hear it rambling in the background. He says, I can't declassify an object because I'm no longer president. And the the special counsel has him on tape saying that. Why can't he keep his mouth shut? What's going to happen to this president if he is indicted? I mean, if he's convicted, he's indicted already. If he's convicted, what's going to happen to him? I I seem to think that it's likely that he will be given a suspended, some version of a suspended sentence, or he may be given home. What do they call? What's the term? Uh, home. Home assignment. Well, what is it when you stay in your home? Well, home detention, yes, but there's a name. But home, yes, for lack of a better term, home detention.
Home
They're
arrest?
saying that he may face home detention. Yes, ma'am.
Is it home arrest? Is that what you're referring to?
Well, no, it's not arrest. He's supposed to arrest it. It's after he has been. It's home detention. That's the title. But there's another thing. But anyway, he would face home detention, and I'm grateful to my brother for lending and helping me here today. The night KV can't get on, but Anthony's helping me, and I'm so grateful. Anyway, I could see him getting home detention at Mar-a-Lago. What a farce that would be! Just a few miles up the road from my palatial estate. I'm joking, not being. I'm not bragging. I'm joking. Our palatial estate there in Broward County, just a few miles up the road in Palm Beach County. Um, that would be unbelievable. That he would be home confinement. That's what I was looking for. Home confinement. That he could actually be confined to his residence there in Broward in Palm Beach County. That would just be too much um, to believe. Um, I am sending a notice to on out to our producer, so please bear with me. Um, so home confinement is a possibility. Um, Home confinement is what he could face if he's elected, and how long would he get? And while he have the Secret Service there, probably the federal marshals to make sure that he didn't break the confinement, that would just be some mess. And I got to tell you, you guys are not you're not going to believe me when I say this. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see a former president going through all of this craziness because it's not about the man. It's about the office. It's about the institution. Um, our former government has been one of the best forms of government in the nation um, and in the world. I'm just hoping that home confinement. Thanks anyway, though. Um, um, so we are hoping that that's not what it is. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to break now, and we got a little treat coming out of the break, and then we're going to the second half of Hot Button Money. Hot Button Money becomes a great show when you call in, or you text in, or you forward your comments, so that I'm not stuck doing all the talking. Okay, we'll be right back. GoGigaWorld.com. They are your virtual producers, which will make yours a great. They're your virtual producers that will make yours a great production. They make you look good. They not only do virtual production, they do web building, all of your virtual needs, anything that's done online, on a computer, any of those things. Madam Producer, if she would come back on at some point, she can tell you about the great thing that they just did this week. You saw some celebrities in the commercial that they work with uh, during the pandemic, post pandemic, BET, just great stuff they do. Listen, I'm not in my home studio, so the lighting's a little different tonight. I don't sure would do a whole lot for this look, but they do their part to make this guy look good virtually. That's uh, GoGigaCreations.com. GoGigaCreations.com. That's who they are. Go Giga World. GoGigaCreations.com. They'll make it happen for you. All right, tonight we have we got to do it. He can't. We just got to do it. Let me just say it like this: we can't let him off the hook. You're despicable. Guess who we got in You're Despicable this week? It's nobody other than Uncle Festus. From the time we saw him standing outside of the Bush vacation home in Kennebunk Point, Maine, um, back in I think it was '88. It wasn't '88. Clinton was president in '80. Back there in the late '80s until now, you have been nothing but an utter embarrassment to our people. You're despicable. Not only that, you're embarrassment to anybody who puts on the road that stands for justice. You're an embarrassment to everybody who Thurgood Marshall and everybody who preceded you. Yes, he's a SCOTUS. He is Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court. You have been a part of a group that has made the Supreme Court look like Mickey Mouse, made it look like a clown show. Um, it's you, Uncle Festus. You're pretty despicable. This week, you were part of a crew that voted on two major things. And the first one was, can you imagine you? I'm sure you haven't looked in the mirror lately, but your color and your kind and where you came from and what you had to endure. You're a few years older than I am, growing up in the South, and you would vote down affirmative action. I wish I could just cite what Professor Eric Michael Dyson had to say about you. But he talked about the fact that you who overcame all of those odds, not because you pick yourself up by the bootstrap, like you're always saying, but because you had help. Help, yes. Even the help that helped you get into Yale University. What was that help? It was called affirmative action. Uncle Festus, you are despicable. You are an embarrassing brand, sir. Here's what you did. You stood against affirmative action, which not did not give African Americans um, or Hispanic Americans advantages. It just gave an opportunity to even the playing field. Have you looked at statistics lately? Have you looked at how things have gone since the Barkey decision? Not only has California seen less Hispanics, a state that drips with a huge number of Hispanic people, their numbers have waned. African American numbers by percentages have waned. Harvard University, which was along with the University of North Carolina, was the impetus of this case getting to the Supreme Court. Those numbers have waned because it was anticipated that people like you, Uncle Festus, would in fact do what we thought you would do, and that's vote down the affirmative action. Then you came back and you were part of the group. Who would ever think that in the tradition of Thurgood Marshall, man, you just got to stop embarrassing us. You were part of the group that dealt with the transgender group. Now, we all have our feelings about a lot of things, but all we ask for every American in this nation is the opportunity to have an equal playing field. That's all we ask, an equal playing field. Have you forgotten about those four little black girls that were killed in a Birmingham church basement? Have you forgotten about Memphis in 1968? Have you forgotten about the Jim Crow laws that restricted us from doing so many things like others have done? Have you forgotten that it was just lately that we could cross over onto the beach side in Duval County and St. Johns County and Volusia County, even in Broward and Dade County, that blacks and Hispanics could go across the bridge and be over on the beach side after dark? Did you know about that? Did you know about my mother who could not be served? She was in a car with a group of uh, her white counterparts in the early 60s, and they would not serve her in Jacksonville, Florida. They would not serve them at a drive-in store because she was in the back seat. You're despicable. Not only that, you've turned out to be a sellout. We would already sold you be a sellout. You sold us out ideologically, but you've also sold the American people out. You're seen on yachts. Your wife's a part of great. Uh, she gets benefits, financial benefits. You're a sellout. You're a do boy for those who have the money, and you've been seen breaking every financial ethics law for the Supreme Court. You and others. I'm sure you feel comfortable with it because you're on that conservative minority majority, and you look one way, but you're actually another. Hey, I'm through with you tonight, man. I hope I never have to say anything else about you. Clarence Thomas, you are despicable. Yeah, that's who you are. Have Thomas, have Stephen. Y'all remember Stephen from Django? That's who he is. That's who he is, everybody. Look at him. You're despicable. I can't look at him anymore. That's it. You're done. So, we've seen what has happened. The Supreme Court just did a lot of things against the rights of what most Americans would want, even when the majority of opinion polls have said, keep this, keep that. The decisions that came down last year that has cost the Republican parties a lot of votes. All of these things are as a result of people like him. Um, we accept that we don't accept it, but we know other people. That's what they do. But somebody who looks like us, who suffered like us, who has been called words and mistreated like us, that he would do that. Let me get off this. I can't deal with that any longer. What else is hot in what else is hot in news? So we're going to have this conversation at some point about reparations. Um, I just think that this at this time, so no, I'm not going to discuss that right now. It's just the political season. Who wins with that discussion? Let me tell you what we're going to hear. When Biden is nominated, everybody that DeSantis, Governor Despicable, and 45, they're going to all point to the vice president. And they're going to tie Biden in with the vice president. What they're going to simply say is his age. They're going to show all the times he stumbled, the times that he's misspoke. He's not the only one that's done that. The smoothest person who ever occupied the office has done that. Barack Obama, his president that he served with his vice president. But they're going to use all of those instances, and they're going to play the race card the female card, the gender card from the bottom of the deck, and they're going to make Kamala Harris the poster girl, just like George Bush did with Willie Horton. They're going to do that with Kamala Harris, and she has been made a very polarized, kind of unpopular figure anyway, and that's what they're going to stick with Papa Joe uh, for the general election. Just watch how we see it. And before the show came on there, I was watching an interesting news piece. I am a Robert F. Kennedy Democrat, if you would. Never said what I am, but if Joe Scarborough can say that, he's a conservative Republican who is now a conservative independent, then certainly I can say that. Robert F. Kennedy was kind of right down the middle. He certainly was during that civil rights era, and that's what it was, even to the time. Remember, he just died literally 2 months after Dr. King was assassinated. He was shot. Um, his policies were would have been a continuation of the Johnson policies that were helped to eradicate Jim Crow laws, Jim Crowism, and they kind of helped. The Supreme Court supported a lot of those things. And now his son is a darling. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a darling of the right wing of this nation. In fact, he scores high, and he's running for president. He's running as a Democrat, and he's running high, and he has high numbers. I think 75%, 17% on one poll, 23%. That's very high against a pretty well respected incumbent president. And and they said that's because he is highly respected by the right wing because he's a conspiracy theorist. And oh my gosh, what a discredit that would be to President Kennedy, to my hero Bobby Kennedy, and to Ted Kennedy, for him to get in and to disrupt the process like that. So we'll have to kind of keep our eyes on that and see how that plays itself out. See how it plays out. Listen, the weather has been something that we've got to deal with. It's hot button Monday. I'm struggling because I had a script all planned for Antwan the comedian. Normally this is not an issue, and my boy KB was going to be on the night, so we were going to double team him. And I probably was going to commit what's tantamount to the homeboy suicide by trying to take either one of those on. And you know that's a lost cause. Your soul can't win with Kim. It can't win with Antwan. And so that's what I was going to do. But we'll see if we can get them on next week. But the weather that's causing them not to be on tonight is the same weather that we have. I got in a discussion last week. I won't say who I got in it with, but that discussion revealed that a lot of middle America, the farm community, the right wing, the conservative community, is against Joe Biden because of his green policies. Can you imagine that? A policy that would help clean up what we know to be climate control. Have you ever done the Alaskan cruise? Have you ever seen the pictures of when you go through that first day when you go through the and I can't, my mind is just going, when you go through where all of that, it shows where the ship can just barely get by because of all of the ice. It's almost like ice suspended in the middle of the air and everything. Well, we did that cruise. I think it was about 2010, maybe 2011, and it was nothing like that. In fact, I can remember picking up the phone and calling the front desk at the cruise ship and asking, when will we be in the glaciers? That's what it's called, the glaciers. How far are we from the glaciers? And she said, if you look out the window, you'll see you're in the glaciers. And to my utter surprise, all I looked out and saw was a few mountains that had a little blue ice in it. There's a little ice in the water. And once we walked out into the ship, that was before we learned about balconies, you could hear the ice falling from a distance. That was the only thing. It was slightly cool, but it was nothing like what you saw pictured. And that's what I was expecting to see. But you know why that has happened? It's called climate control. It's because of the factions, and the ecology has a lot to do that. The emissions and all of those things that are happening has caused the atmosphere to be a changed atmosphere. And so it also causes the erratic weather patterns that we're seeing now. Right now in the Northeast, it's raining. It's summertime, but the weather in the South, in the North and Southwest is 118 degrees. Las Vegas was 118 degrees a day. Now, I've been in the summertime. It's been 104 degrees, but I'm saying 118 degrees. Florida, North Florida, the weather has been in the high 90s, 98, 99. No God for homeboy this week, not in that kind of weather. It's been raining. It's been hot beyond measure all across the South. I know it's June. I know it's summertime, but it is unusually hot. And climate change has a lot to do with that. The emissions in the earth that we've been hearing about for 20, 30 years, and everybody thought this was some kind of liberal jargon. Well, as it turns out, it's not. It's much more than that. So um, that's what we're facing. So President Biden has been a major proponent of green energy. You see more and more cars. They're advertised. They're marketed as electric cars, totally electric. And by the way, if you drive a car that has a high um, maintenance bill, when you have to go do that maintenance annually, you don't have to worry about that with that green engine. So those are some of the things. Look, we've been driving hybrids, but not green hybrids, not totally electric hybrids. So these are things that we're dealing with. So just think about those kinds of things. So I was in this conversation with this young fellow. We were talking about it just boiled down of almost spew hatred towards the president because the president is pushing these green initiatives, which causes the farmers and others who depend on fossil fuel, the traditional fossil fuel, which 45 pushed and pushes now, those things, which helps to kill the environment that we're trying to move from. This young man says, that's why I can't support him because he's hurting a lot of people. And so my conversation to Dozell tonight is, hey guys, let's look for the greater good. We all know we all have our sides, we all have our preferences, we all have our choices, but let's look to see what really happens for the greater good. The greater good is an equal society. The greater good is a safer society. The greater good is a more ecological friendlier society where we're all looking out for each other as opposed to a few economic interests. Can we do that? One of the things I noticed in the Miami Herald yesterday was, and boy, when the Miami Herald comes at you, they'll get you. They're the ones who did the expose on Marietta, the state juvenile facility. I know a little bit about that because my dad was in the juvenile criminal justice system and prevented a lot of young African Americans from going over there. And now we know why they did an expose about probably 15, 20 years ago that exposed all of the kids that were killed, that were brutalized, and particularly if you were black, you didn't stand much of a chance over there. They also did the expose or the series on Epstein. Epstein had been doing what we know he was doing, and he was given a virtual slap on the hand where he spent time in a Palm Beach jail, in what should have been a federal prison because it was across state lines what he was doing, and while in a local jail, lots of times it would turn out that he would spend time at home confinement. Say he was able to work and do what he needed to do, and he spent the night at home under uh, a guard that he easily paid for. And they went tooth and nail and ended up with a series of convictions, and those convictions led to him apparently allegedly committing suicide while um, awaiting sentencing in a federal jail in New York City. So they don't play. Now they are on the path of the city of Miami-Dade, the city of Miami's Mayor Suarez, who is now a presidential candidate, and his net income, his net worth, rather, went from him being slightly over a six-figure person when he became mayor to him now being a high seven-figure person because of the contacts that he's made while serving as mayor. The city of Miami is the city of Miami is the mayor's position is a part-time position because it's a city manager form of government. But what he's able to do is get a lot of bills and legislations passed, and he has now been affiliated with several of the companies that unethically uh, are doing business with the city of Miami, and thus, and there are some records that cannot be seen because state and Miami-Dade or the city of Miami's laws don't require them. Now, as a federal candidate running for president, he won't be um, covered from that. I know that a few weeks ago, they talked about how he always had great tickets to the Miami Heat playoff games, and they showed those tickets and where he sat, and he and his those whom he brought with him, and they would say that those tickets and a night at the Heat game would be like a $10,000 outing. And then they showed a few weeks ago the Grand Prix or whatever it's called, the racing thing, and how much money that cost for the tickets that he had. So now the Miami Herald is knee deep on his case. So we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll kind of see how that turns out for the mayor of Miami, who happens to be running for president. He's running for president. All right. There's this guy that plays for the Los Angeles Angels, the LA. I'm not used to saying. I used to saying the California Angels or the Anaheim Angels. So I'm old school. Okay, give me a break. He's a pitcher, but he's like leading the league in batting. He's hit so many home runs. I think it's 39 or something like that. Is that about right, Amp? 39 home runs in the 30s. I think I heard 37, 39 today. And he's going into next week's All-Star game as a two-way player. He's a pitcher, and yet he's also a hitter. So he doesn't have to have a designated hitter to come up for him when he goes to the plate, because he is his own he is his own designated hitter. And so just how crazy is that? That has not happened since the days of Babe Ruth. We understand. I'm not this big baseball guy, but I followed during the playoffs and the All Star games, and that's what's happening there. That's the story that is captivating the sports headline and the baseball news. Now, I tell you what is really hot in sports right now. The worldwide leader, ESPN. You know, it's owned by the Disney Corporation. The Disney Corporation and Governor Despicable. They're in another round of fights. But the worldwide leader announced 20 some layoffs on last week, and some big names fell. The corporate leader, Michael Eisner at Disney, proposed that 7,000 jobs would be cut across the board: Disney World, Disneyland, Disney in Japan, every Disney product, and that, of course, affected ESPN. My wife and I, all the time, we lodge in our places out in where we pass the whole ESPN. I forgot the sports facility, and that's in fact where the bubble was in 2020, where the basketball, the NBA bubble was, and all of that complex over there. All of that complex, all of those employees were a part of the cuts, but 20 big name personalities at ESPN fell. I'm not a big boxing fan, but a couple of the boxing names fell. In football, Steve Young went down. In basketball, uh, what's the brother's name? They came down to Miami with Pat Riley. One of them coached the Heat. The other one coached the Houston Rockets. He is a third. He's a three-way. I'm going to have to find that because I've got the names. He went down. My dog Keyshawn Johnson went down. Um, Jalen Rose went down. But possibly one of the bigger names that went down was Max Kellerman. Max Kellerman, who just a few years ago was was Stephen A. Smith's partner on First Take, and of course they had that unceremonious breakdown a few years ago, uh, and so Max went on to become the Jeff Van Gundy. That was the name I was looking for. Max Kellerman went ahead and was given a show called This Just In, and he did a great job with it. And he was part of J. Will, um, Keyshawn J. Will, and Max in the Morning, the radio program that I had just started becoming a great fan on. When Morning Joe with the commercial, I started cutting over to that, and it started being my show, and it's just amazing the names that went down. I'm trying Jeff Van Gundy, Jalen Rose, Keyshawn Johnson, Max Kellerman, Susie Colbert. Who thought she was going on? Chris Shellos, Matt Hasselbeck. Wow, Steve Young, Neil Everett. Wow, Ashley Brewer, LaFonso Ellis, Todd McShay, Jordan Cornett, Jason Fitz, and David Pollock. These are some big names that went down at the worldwide leader with their cuts that took place on this week. It's called like Bloody Thursday, I think. And so we hope that they can. I know they're cultivating some young talent. They're bringing up some of the guys that worked on the NBA. The NBA Today show that will be working will probably take Van Gundy's spot along with Mark Jackson and Mike Breen, the top broadcasting team in basketball now. Probably somebody from that program, maybe Big Perk, or perhaps what's the other guy's name? Can't think of his name, but he's also a star of the NBA Today show. So the worldwide leader is going through some changes, and they're saying they just brought in this big name, this guy who had the podcast. And they brought him in, and his salary was so big. So it's a lot of clapping back and forth on social media. He's clapping back at people that are blaming him for being the reason that all of these names have been cut from the worldwide leader. So I think we kind of covered some things. I want to talk to any young person. Man, stand for your convictions. Don't. I mean, and I'm not saying compromise your convictions, but Clarence Thomas has really hurt us. He set us back. The policies that he has helped with the Supreme Court has helped us. Um, I'm trying to find his name. What's his name out? This guy. This. Okay, El Tiny. That's Shohei Otani. That's the pitcher. I'm kind of doing something. He has a 7.31 loss record as a pitcher. He has a 3.06 batting average. It was 29. He has 31 homers, 68 RBIs, ribbies as a batter, 11 stolen bases. This guy's a bona fide athlete, and 127 strikeouts as a pitcher. He is a real live Jim Thorpe type fella. That's who he is. Uh, wow. So that's the next week's All Star game. Next Tuesday night's All Star game is going to be a big one. We'll celebrate a big one. He's going to be the star of that show. Thanks, Amp. I was saying I need to be around Amp all the time with this show. So stand up for your convictions. But Toy,
Well, I would say you referenced Jim Thorpe, and I haven't thought about him in years. And a lot of people don't, younger people don't know who he is. Can you tell us a little bit about Jim Thorpe?
Jim Thorpe was a indigenous person. He was a Native American. He was a awesome athlete, and he won a lot of medals at the one of the Olympics. And I don't want to denigrate his legacy by being false, but something happened, and they ended up stripping him of his gold medals, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that he was an indigenous brother, and of course, you got Wikipedia and all of that these days, but he was an extraordinary athlete who lived on the other side of town, so to speak. And so that's the comparison. He was an extraordinary athlete, and his ethnicity caused him to be stripped. It was the underlying area of him being stripped of his medals. And Burt Lancaster, the outstanding actor, these are the days in black and white films. I saw that as probably a 10, 11, 9-year-old boy. I saw the video. Go Google or Wikipedia Jim Thorpe, and thanks, Madam Producer, for bringing him to the scene, and look at him and see what an extraordinary athlete he was. This young man, Atani, is certainly his numbers are somewhat representative of the same thing what we're hearing. Before we close tonight, everybody who's listening, please mentor a young person and teach them to stand up for their convictions and let their convictions and their values be inclusive of all people. I was thinking about this the other day. Some people are tall, some people are short, some people are fat, some people are skinny, some people are light, some people are dark, some people were born here, some people were born there, some were born a male, some were born a female. But at the end of the day, not one of us got a chance to choose what we look like. We didn't get to pick the hair that we wear. Well, if you buy it, but you know what I mean. We didn't get to pick if we'll be tall or small. We didn't get to pick if we will live over here or there. We didn't get to pick what nation we be from. We didn't get to pick what color, our ethnicity. We didn't get to pick our gender. That was assigned at birth. And when we get to the end of this life, I'm sure there'll be an explanation of why. But for now, wherever we are, at the end of the day, we're all of God's people. None is greater than the other. Just because you live over here, or you went to school there, or you have money, or your name is this, we're all the same. And so, if you ever rise to the position where you can affect others, and all of us have that opportunity on some scale or another, think about the best for everybody, not just ourselves, not just our own, but for everybody, for all people. And give people room to be who they are. Have an understanding mind and heart, understanding rather. Let love be the predominant factor and not hate, not prejudice, none of these negative tracks or none of these negative traits or factors. But love people. If you love them, there's a place on the other side of death. And I've seen a whole lot of that, lost a lot of friends, a lot of great names. We've dedicated our show to a lot of great people over the last 3 weeks. If you'll do that, if you'll mentor somebody like Dr. Bracer, who we talked about today, if you'll do that, then as Dr. King said, then our living will not be in vain. Dialogue with Dozell. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for working with us. Had to pull it by myself tonight unexpectedly. Listen, if we can't get Antwan and KV back on next week, that's going to be the goal. It'll be the following week. Got a lot of jokes. We're going to let them have it for not being able to sign on. Get some real internet, bruh. Get away with that cheap internet. Dialogue with Dozell. We out. We love you. Thanks, Madam Producer.